Crystal, if we could have that first slide, and I'm going to go into my talk about what makes books memorable. There we are, the joy of books. But before I do that, I want to just tell you one little thing that happened this week that was so cool. Maybe I should have lit a candle for this. You know, my last talk when I was here in February was about book banning going on and all of that stuff. So anyway, a friend of mine sent me this notice that in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, a woman, the newly sworn in Central Bucks School Board was sworn in, and all the members but one, the president, were sworn in on the Bible. She brought in a stack of banned books. Isn't that fantastic? I love it. I can give you the titles if you want later. But she's the president of the board, and she was sworn in on a stack of banned books. I thought, way to go. We need more people like that. Okay, so we're going to talk about how do these things take root in our hearts, these books or music or art that we love. Let me get my pieces. Okay. And by the way, you'll be seeing slides with lots of book covers, and I do have a bibliography if you're curious and want the titles of these later. Just grab me and I'll give you a bibliography. So, the 4 H's, why we hold certain books close to our heart. You'll see there's My Side of the Mountain and A Child's Christmas in Wales. Those are both special to me. Every Christmas Eve, my husband and I, after dinner, after everything's settled down, we have a glass of wine and we listen to Dylan Thomas's beautiful voice reading A Child's Christmas in Wales. And we've probably done that for like 45 years, every Christmas Eve. And My Side of the Mountain was my favorite book when I was 12, because what kid doesn't think they were born into the wrong family when they're 12 and want to run away and live in a tree on the side of a mountain, you know? Oh, that has stayed with me all my life. Okay, next slide. So, the 4 H's, probably the top one's not going to surprise you. Heart, hurt, hope, and humor. These are the things I think that contribute to a book that allows it to remain in our hearts. There is a 5th H, which we can't really talk about because that 5th H, as some of you are meditating, is how you encountered that piece of art. And that could be the thing that makes it stick in your heart, whether that was a grandparent reading to you as a child, or some other special situation you were in. I remember hearing the drum solo from the middle of Inagata Davida when I was in a tent at night, dark, by myself, and about 12 years old. And I went, oh my gosh. I was blown away by that. But anyway, so we won't talk about how, but we'll talk about heart, hurt, hope, and humor. Okay, next slide. Here are some books with heart in them, and I'm sure you can think of many more. Heart is the most important concept of the 4 I want to talk about today. But what exactly do we mean by heart? Unfortunately, some people confuse sweetness, cuteness, lightness with heart. But these have nothing to do whatsoever with heart. When we talk about heart, what we're talking about is a celebration of and a compassion for humanity. We are talking about books that respect the basic humanness of its characters, whether those characters are people, animals, aliens, abstractions like death in the book Thief. Heart is the empathy we have for the fact that we are only human. We feel for, understand our weaknesses, our moments of heroism, our depths of despair, our sillinesses, even our frustrations and times of anger. This empathy is what shines forth in a book that matters. This shines forth in books like a lot of these here, and I'm sure you can think of more. Let's turn the slide. Okay, as I said, whether the characters are humans, aliens, animals, it doesn't matter. They have to reveal and revel in that compassion for humanity. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it needs to be upfront. Usually you connect with a character in its first little bit of a book. You know this is the one This is the heart of the book. And it has to revel in it. It can't just be passing. You need to spend some time in the compassion of that. And those are the kinds of books that stick with us. I'm going to read to you a couple of the first sentences of a couple of books that have a lot of heart in them, I think. Next slide. I need to explain a little bit about this first book, Owl in Love. Owl is a teenage girl. I can't remember if she's like 13 or 14, but what's odd about her is she is a were-owl. So at night, she turns into an owl. During the day, she's your typical teenage girl. So listen to this very first sentence. I am in love with Mr. Lindstrom, my science teacher. I found out where he lives, and every night I perch on a tree branch outside his bedroom window and watch him sleep. He sleeps in his underwear, Fruit of the Loom, size 34. Isn't that great? I mean, you know right away, this is a teenager's heart. This is the typical teenager. This is the specificity of its Fruit of the Loom, size 34. Of course, she's got owl eyes, so she can see all that, right? You know there's going to be a lot of heart in this book. And then, of course, we have the great book, The Grapes of Wrath, which has just a gorgeous, beautiful first line. To the red country and part of the gray country of Oklahoma, the last rains came gently, and they did not cut the scarred earth. How soft that is. The rains came gently. We know this book is going to be full of heart and compassion and all those wonderful things. Maniac McGee happens to be one of my favorite children's books if you're looking for a book to buy for a gift this holiday season. You see there's a big symbol on the book that means it was a Newbery Award winner. Here's the first line. They say Maniac McGee was born in a dump. They say his stomach was a cereal box and his heart a sofa spring. How sad that is. And how many times it had been squashed and sat on. It just, you feel that, you know right away this book is full of heart, and you know the character is, and you have compassion. Okay, next slide. So heart needs to be displayed up front. It needs to be specific, like that Fruit of the Loom underwear. Judicious word choice, like a sofa spring, you know, we get it right away. We get that. Now, sacrifice, forgiveness, and redemption are types of hurt that exposes heart. When we get hurt, we understand the humanity. We can have that compassion that it's an opportunity for us to be empathetic. There's lots of ways that we can be hurt, and that characters in books we love get hurt. But next slide, please. We'll talk about, these are some books that have hurt in them, of Mice and Men, and several others in here you might recognize. Long Way Down is a very interesting book if you're buying for a teen. You'll see all the award medals down the side of it in that top right corner there. It's about a boy who's living in the projects in Chicago, and his older brother's just been killed, shot. And he goes upstairs, rummages around in a secret place. He knows his older brother has kept a gun, and he's going to go out and get revenge. The whole book takes place in the elevator trip down from his apartment and the different people that come into the elevator that he interacts with. It's just a beautiful book, gorgeous writing. Of Mice and Men, even a book like Knuffle Bunny, a children's picture book. Knuffle Bunny's been left in the dryer accidentally, and they've gone home. There's hurt there, you know, that this child has been separated from their lovey. Night John, I made the mistake of reading in a restaurant. It's a very thin book. And you know how they have those little metal napkin holders? I went through the whole thing, crying my eyes out, blowing my nose. There's a pile growing next to me. And the waitress came over, "Are you okay?" And I'm going, yes, yes, yes. Anyway, such a good book. It's about a man who goes in and teaches the slaves to read at night, even though it's illegal to do. Just a beautiful book. So let's talk about hurt a little bit. We know things have to happen in stories. There has to be roadblocks, all of that. But it's more than simply having problems. Hurt is the sucker punch to the heart, the bruise that proclaims the humanity of a story. In books that are memorable, we see the hurt. That's important. We see our characters being kicked right where it hurts the most. And because we have all been kicked in the heart at some time in our lives, this is the truth of a really good book. Next slide. Hurt needs to be seen, so it needs some space and time. And we want to see it in scene. In other words, we want to spend time with it in things actually happening right in front of you, not in passing. If you imagine a novel as a beaded necklace, okay? The beads are scenes. The little chain between the beads are how you get from one scene to the next. So they're just like in passing, I went to so-and-so went to the grocery store, and then there's this big scene. We need to see it. We don't want to just be told so-and-so was hurt or upset. We want to spend time, space and time with that hurt. So it needs to be slowed down. The great record producer T-Bone Burnett said, "Soft is hard," meaning when you sing soft, it hits harder to the heart. And it works especially well with very simple, understated language. In art, it's, the viewer's eye would zoom in on the hurt character, and that character would need space around him or her, even if they're standing in a crowd. Okay? Space makes the hurt stand out. It singles out the aloneness of the hurt, and it personalizes it. I'm going to share a couple of pages from a couple of books that display the hurt so beautifully. Next slide, please. This is from one of my favorite books, American Road Trip, a Michigan author, Patrick Flores Scott. And to set you up for this scene, Teodoro, the main character, his brother Manny, has got PTSD from fighting in the Iraq War. And Teodoro T, he's called, and his sister decide they need a road trip, a family road trip, because Manny is just not feeling anything. He's lethargic. They worry about him. And so they decide they're all going to go on this road trip across the U.S. or to his uncle's farm in California. Well, he wakes up one morning, and they're at a motel. He wakes up, Manny's not in his bed. Now, look at the way this is laid out. All the rest of the book is regular paragraphs, big indented paragraphs. And here you have one line after one line after one line after one line after one line. The author told me he had to talk to his editor about this to make sure they didn't have a problem with this. They really wanted to slow this scene down. Okay. So he sees Manny in a field, and all along he's been hearing this funny clicking sound every so often. I run at him. I'm about a half a football field away, and I can see him perfect now, lit up by the stars and the moon. He stops walking. He looks up at the sky. I don't stop running. He drops to his knees. I run at him fast, whipping my bare legs. He looks down at something, fumbles with something. No, Manny! He lifts a pistol to his head. Oh, God, where did he get that? I'm 20 yards from him now. Manny looks up at the stars again, then a click as he releases the safety. 20 feet away now. I can hear him breathe. I can't believe he can't hear me. I lock my jaw. I clench my fists. It's hard to read. Manny hauls in one last deep breath. I lower my shoulder. A howl blasts from my throat. Manny's eyes look back at me. I explode into my brother. My shoulder cracks his back. My head cracks his head. My knuckles burn as I punch the gun away. Manny crumbles to the ground, a clap of thunder as the gun flies into the air. I slide right over Manny, into the dirt and over a row of plants. My ears hiss and burn. I cup my hands to my head to make it stop, but it doesn't stop. Manny sits upright and takes a feeble swing at me. I spring to my knees and swing. My fist blasts his jaw. He shakes it off and comes at me, misses with another swing. I hit him in the face. I hit him in the gut, in the jaw. I hit him over and over until he's down in the dirt and he's not moving. I yank him upright by his shirt, pull his face to mine. Fight me, Manny, fight me. He's limp, not moving, but I can't stop yelling. Fight, Manny, fight, Manny. I yell it until I've got nothing left. My God, what a scene. What a scene. And it's not just quickly that his brother went out into the fields with a pistol. We have slowed it down. We have looked at every single step along the way. Wonderful book. If you want to get that for an older teen. Next slide. I'll take a drink of water. This is a very well-known children's book. Again, another gold sticker on it. I think it was a Caldecott medal book. In this book, I need to explain the setup a little bit. We talk about space and time, and the setup is that Officer Buckle gets invited to speak at all the schools about, say, safety lessons. The police officer, he comes in and he does an assembly in the gym and talks to the kids about safety tips. Well, he goes with his canine companion, Gloria. Now, unbeknownst to Officer Buckle, every time he visits the school, Gloria is behind him doing tricks. And the kids applaud and laugh and clap their hands, and Officer Buckle thinks, oh, God, they love me. I'm doing such a great job, right? Well, one night the news comes, the newscasters, and they tape the show. And in that top right, you see him watching the TV, and he sees that Gloria is doing tricks behind him. So the next day, principal of Napville School telephones him to ask to come to an assembly. And down there we see him kind of pouting. No, he won't go. They don't want me anyway, they just want Gloria. Gloria can go by herself. And then we see Gloria over on the stage, and she's all by herself and not doing tricks. But what's important here is the artwork draws us in. We see the space around Officer Buckle. He's hurt. We see the space around Gloria. She's hurt, right? And of course, his final tip, there is a slight accident with the principal, and his final tip is you never desert your buddy, right? Next slide. Very plain language is often what makes something stick with us, not those, $10 words. This is a poem I absolutely love, and I send to friends who are grieving. I loved my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I love my friend. A lovely, lovely poem by Langston Hughes with hardly any two-syllable words in it. So I think sometimes when it's straightforward, it's, plain English, it hits our hearts a little harder. Okay, next slide. So I talked about sacrifice, forgiveness, and redemption also are a way to expose heart. And here are some books. I think you can probably think of others. Of course, Velveteen Rabbit, Sacrifice, Charlotte's Web, Sacrifice, Redemption with A Christmas Carol. So all of these wonderful books. And I have one slide later on about Real Cowboys, which is absolutely one of my, I don't know if it's but it is certainly up there. One of my all-time favorite picture books if you're giving gifts for kids. And you can see the light. The artist has put the light right on that cowboy's heart, right there where he's feeding the calf. It's just beautiful, beautiful book. I have a copy with me if you want to see it later. Okay, next slide. So hurt needs to be seen. We need space and time. We want it in scene. We want it slowed down. And it works well with understatement, very simple words. And one of the reasons we need space is because hope has to creep in. That's another of my H words. Next slide. Okay, here's some books that have a lot of hope in them. Hope is a thing with feathers, according to Emily Dickinson. And by the way, we were talking about birthdays. Today is Emily Dickinson's birthday, 12/10. It flies into our miseries and drops us a lifeline. The amount of hope in a book is defined by its audience. The youngest readers and listeners need to know that the world is fair, though we know it isn't, and full of wonders, which it is. For young readers, there needs to be a certainty in justice, kindness, and fairness. Bad guys need to get what's coming to them, and kids need to get what is most wanted by their hearts, not always the same thing as what is asked for, right? As audiences get older, hope is often more tenuous, especially for adult readers. Think of that famous last line of Gone with the Wind, the book, not the movie. After all, tomorrow is another day. It caused a fervor in its day, as it was one of our very first bestsellers with an unresolved ending. But the hope is firmly there. We know Scarlett's determination and grit. She'll get Rhett back, if it's the last thing she does. Finding hope is especially important in young adult books. Whatever hurt a teen is dealing with, he, she, they need to know that things will get better. Now, fortunately, when a teen falls in love with a book, they fall in love hard and unreservedly. And that is one of the wonderful things about teens, because a teen's heart is so exposed. So, hope is critical, it's audience-driven. Young readers want certainty and fairness, kindness and justice. It can be more tenuous as a reader ages. And one of the things that gives us hope is my last H for today, and that is, next slide, humor. I love this quote from Jill Connor Brown, author of the Sweet Potato Queen's Big Ass Cookbook. Her quote is, "I believe that the ability to laugh at oneself is fundamental to the resiliency of the human spirit." Next slide. There are some of the books that are humorous, adult and kids. I do this talk quite a lot for writers, so I had to add some adult books in there, like Catch-22 and Innocents Abroad, and one of my favorite, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Humor, I believe, is fundamental to our resiliency. Now, some of you might be surprised that humor is one of my 4-H's. I mean, there are some books that you can love that might have very little humor in them, right? So why is it one of my 4-H's? I include it because humor is not an afterthought in our maturation and in learning to empathize. It has its hot little hand firmly linked with hope. When we can feel the humor in a situation, even if it's just a whiff of humor, we know, without knowing how we know, that things are going to get better. It is not for nothing that we often refer to humor as comic relief. It is relief. Sometimes we must come up for air, sunshine, and laughter, and without these we couldn't survive. I believe humor is as critical to our survival as the invention of agriculture. With humor, hurt can be soothed, and hope has easier access to our hearts. There, I've used all 4-H's in one sentence. This matters, as humor allows us to find our way around obstacles, to live to fight another day, to step into the skins of others and empathize with what they are feeling, and to stand outside of ourselves for a little bit of objectivity. And this is kind of funny. I find it very ironic that something so subjective as humor allows us to be objective. You know, all of us have different funny bones, but it allows us to stand outside ourselves and be a little more objective about us and the human condition. What is critical here is that humor is the handmaiden of hope. It services our lives. When we laugh at ourselves, we can more clearly see what it is that matters. Next screen, next slide. So it's healing. We ought to make fun of ourselves. It's rooted in empathy. It's the handmaiden of hope, and it soothes hurt. So humor does a lot of work. And I want to spend just a couple minutes on the next few slides talking about humor. Next slide. A few ways that humor works. As a subplot, we know Shakespeare had a lot of subplots that were humorous. As metaphor, I have to say, tell you, one of my favorite mixed metaphors was said by, oh, good grief. I'm trying to remember who said it. Oh, well, I will come back to that as soon as I can remember who said it, because I need to attribute it. As a reflection of ourselves, as misdirection and reversals, an escalation of logics that ends up being illogical, like in Catch-22, wordplay, mixed metaphors. You got a lot of those with Archie Bunker and that kind of thing. As a disruption of the rule of three, when you have two things and then a third that surprises you. So there are lots of ways that humor appears in books. Next slide. Okay, so as a reflection of ourselves, this is a wonderful book if you want to purchase it for a child for Christmas. Diary of a Wombat by an Australian writer. Essentially what happens is this wombat has moved in and raided their garbage can, getting carrots and things, and they do everything they can think of to get rid of it, you know, they move the, you know, try to move the food away, do all this kind of stuff, and finally at the end, demanded oats and carrots, only had to bang metal object for a short time before they appeared. Last evening, have decided that humans are easily trained to make quite good pets. Dug a new hole to be closer to them. Love it. Okay, next slide. Sometimes it's through a reversal of expectations. Next, yeah, there we are. This is a greeting card that I buy sometimes for friends. Sometimes I wonder how you got to be so great. And, hang on. Other times I think about penguins. I love that. It's just a very simple greeting card, but it shows how a reversal of expectations can be humorous. Next slide. Wordplay. Here's a tricolon, which is that rule of three. Losing weight is simple. Eat less, exercise more, and pay NASA to let you live in an anti-gravity chamber. Again, the expectation is subverted. Next slide. When you combine unrelated things, these are some wonderful books, Cat Kong, Dogzilla, Frankenbunny, and kids love Captain Underpants. What is funnier than your school principal in a pair of whitey tighties doing superpower things, you know? Okay, next slide. So we've talked about heart, hurt, hope, and humor. They're all important aspects of what make some books memorable, books that stay in our hearts. Last slide. Or the next slide, not the last slide. Okay, yeah. I told you that this is one of my all-time favorite picture books, Real Cowboys by Kate Heffler. And it has all those things, heart, hurt, hope, humor. The last couple pages here, I just want to read to you and you'll see what I mean. It has cowboys doing all kinds of things, real things. And the last couple pages are, real cowboys are artists. They create, they dream, they make up stories for their friends and horses and dogs. Stories about the world that are bigger than moving cattle to Stillwater or Red Town. They set under skies so big the stars take shape on the ground, and they wonder what's past the horizon. And one day when their work is done, real cowboys find out. And then we see the horse without the rider. Just a lovely, lovely book. Next slide. And that's my monthly newsletter. If you're interested, my website's just shutta.com. I send out Oh, writing prompts, links to articles about writing. I talk about covers of books because covers draw people in. So it's just, if you're interested in that kind of thing. And last slide, the next one. There we are. There's my website, and I will have books for sale next door. That's it. Thank you so much for inviting me again. I've had a good time sharing this with you.